In this lesson, we're going to be introducing you to HTML and some of the tools that we're going to be using within this course to create some HTML pages. The basics of HTML is that it's actually the most fundamental basic building block of the web. Every web page needs HTML, and it essentially defines the content of the web page and as well as the structure of the web page. And there are other languages such as CSS and JavaScript that you might have heard of as well to develop websites. Now CSS works with the HTML structure and helps create the appearance and the presentation of how that content gets presented. And then there's JavaScript, which provides functionality. So the next set of lessons, we're going to be focusing on HTML, what it is, and how you can start creating your own HTML pages. So the basics of every website, you can go to any website on the internet, and all of the websites are comprised of code. So essentially the idea for HTML is that if you have some content and you want somebody else to see that content, to be able to deliver that content to somebody else, you need a way to be able to present that content, and that's what HTML does. So HTML gives you a way, a language that browsers can interpret and that can be easily transcribed across the internet and re-rendered out in the anticipated way, the way that it was meant to be designed. So this website here, we know that all of this content needed to be presented, and HTML is the way that the content gets presented. So you can look at the source code of any website, and within this course as well, just to let you know, I am going to be using Chrome as my browser. Now, it's not to say that Chrome is the best browser for surfing the internet, but when you're developing websites, Chrome does have a lot of really great features built in right out of the box. So if you don't have Chrome installed, I would suggest that you do check that out and install it, because it does have, again, really good resources coming out of the box when you are developing websites. So it's got these dev tools that are available just within the Chrome browser. So every Chrome browser will have that. And going back to web pages, so every web page is comprised of source code, and this is the source code for the website that we were just looking at. And as you can see, there's a series of opening and closing tags, and this is essentially what the HTML is. So we've got a tag that opens up, and then we've got a bunch of content in the middle, and then we've got it eventually closing. And in between here, we see that there's a bunch of different opening tags, and then they all get closed off, opening again, closed off. And this is the whole idea of HTML. We've got tags that get nested into other tags, and this is basically how we build HTML code. So the idea is that we've got a parent HTML tag, and then we've got tags in the middle of it, and those tags represent different structure within the web page. So we start out with HTML, we've got head, we've got a closing head, and then we've got body. So just like with any other way to deliver that content, we need to be able to provide structure, and both ends, so the web developer needs to be able to have a way to present that content, and the browser, which is what the web user is going to be using in order to see that content, also needs to have a uniform way to be able to read that content. And that's what HTML does. And I know initially when you look at source code, there just looks like a whole bunch of code here, but really at the end of the day, HTML is not that hard. There's not a lot of elements that comprise HTML, so there's probably only about 100 different elements within HTML, and most websites are only probably using about 10 to 15% of those elements. And you'll see that there's a lot of repetition. So we've got these LIs here, we've got divs here, and we've got the same LIs here, we've got divs again, and we can see that there really is a lot of repetition with those tags. So that makes it a lot easier to get started with HTML, and just understanding the basic tags will give you a good solid foundation and a basis to start developing structure for your web pages. Another good thing about HTML is that really the tags, there's semantic tags, a lot of them. So we see title, and it just makes sense what type of content will get presented between these tags. So this is essentially the basic introduction of HTML. And in the next lesson, we're going to show you how you can start creating your own HTML code. And if you do ever want to see source code of any one website, so you can go online, search over to your favorite website, and right now I'm on a Windows machine, so I can press Control-U and see the source code, or I can right-click anywhere on an empty space within Chrome browser, and I can see that I've got this option here in the pop-up menu to view page source, and by clicking that you can see that you can get access to the source code. And initially this doesn't look like it's going to be very useful, but as we progress through the course, this is going to make a lot more sense about how this HTML code is getting presented. And the other thing that I also wanted to add in, that why we're using Chrome is because it does have DevTools, and DevTools essentially give you a way to do an inspection on the source code. So we can go ahead again on a Windows machine, Control-Shift-I. They work on Macs as well, and for Macs it's going to be Command-Opt-I, so very similar commands, and you can open up those DevTools and take a closer look. So I'm going to just open that up, and just to show you that we can actually see the source code. So we're starting out within the Elements tab of our Dev Console. So this is the Dev Console, and just going to close that, minimize all of these additional screens here, and you can see that this is essentially the source code of the website in a nutshell. Here we can open and close the tags that are nested in, and we can see that all of the different tags that are available. We've also got a way to hover over different elements and just do an inspect, and we can find out more about that particular element within the DevTools. And this is why the DevTools is really useful and super useful when you are developing websites. So starting with HTML, we've got CSS over here on the right hand side, and then we also have communication with JavaScript. So as we progress within our web development expertise, then we can move along to CSS and JavaScript as well. So basically, once you get HTML down, you can create and interact with the DevTools, take a look at the source code, and you can start getting a better understanding of what this code does and how it's being presented within the web page.